All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Mainly Hoops podcast. If you've been enjoying our content, please make sure to like and subscribe. We appreciate your support. We have a good SEC matchup here, a noontime game this Saturday, Tennessee at Florida. The line has not come out yet, but I believe Florida will probably be slightly favored because it is a home game for them. Both teams have had kind of their ups and downs so far this season, I would say. I think for the most part, they may have figured things out. I'm not too sure, but there's still a lot of season to be had. Marcus, we're going to start off with you. What does Tennessee have to do to come out of Gainesville with a win here?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's going to be no easy task. Like Florida, I think knew coming into this week that this was a massive week for them to look to go 2-0, two big home games against Georgia and Tennessee. So it's not going to be easy, but Tennessee picked up a nice win. They finally got some guys going a little bit the other night against Texas, which it's not really saying much. Texas is struggling, and I'm a Texas fan. They're hurting right now. But Jacoby Gillespie was fantastic. He had 34 in that game. Still looking for Nate Ament to get going. He had 8 points in this game, only took 4 shots, only played 22 minutes. Really the engine here was Jacoby Gillespie. He played 38 minutes and kind of dominated things. But, in this game, I think they're going to need more from him. They're going to need more of the same, which I think that it's slightly gettable here in this matchup against some of these Florida guards that, we've been a little bit weary of on the perimeter as defenders. And quite frankly, we've been weary of in their full game. Which I'm sure Cody will touch on a little bit more. But, I think they're going to need Gillespie to get going. And then they're going to need, especially on the road, they're going to need somebody else to step up here. Hopefully it's Nate Ament for them. But, he just hasn't shown through at all. But they will need somebody else in this road atmosphere if they want to pick up a win. They're going to have to do a really good job on the defensive glass, which is an area that they've struggled a little bit. They're 100th in the country in defensive rebound rate. Of course, this Florida offensive rebounding attack is, again, one of the most formidable in the country, second in the country in offensive rebound rate. So, for Tennessee, they're going to have to really try and limit second chance opportunities. Like even the other night against Texas had 15 offensive rebounds in that game, which, if Texas is getting 15 offensive rebounds, I don't think it sets up super favorably on the road. Not having Cade Phillips right now is certainly hurting them in the defensive rebounding area. But they're going to have to try and limit things on that end. And then also on the defensive end, I think they can try and kind of take advantage of Florida's poor guard play. I know this Tennessee defense hasn't really turned teams over at the clip that it maybe has in years past. They don't really have the same personnel. There's no Zakai Ziegler on the basketball, but they still have capable defenders, and they're still a top 15 defense in the country. And these Florida guards have been pretty woeful up to this point, right? I mean, they're 225th in turnover rate. We were talking off air before, Boogie Fland is 2 of 34 from 3 in top 60 KenPom games. So they've just really struggled to take care of the ball, to take high quality shots. So I think on the defensive end, their guards need to really try and just heat the ball up, make those guys have to make plays. They just don't look super comfortable. Xavier Lee seems to be taking some shots and trying to do things that he could get away with at Princeton, but this is the SEC now. It's a whole different ball game, and they've just struggled to get comfortable on a consistent basis. So I think trying to play into that a little bit, try and limit the front court as much as you can, try and limit Haug as much as you can, Condon, and try and make these guards beat you. Try and make them be the ones that have to hit the shots on a consistent basis, because they just haven't been able to do that. I don't know what the numbers were the other day. Let me just see real quick. They were combined 4 of 19 from the floor against Georgia, and 1 of 8 from 3. So, it didn't exactly work out. Of course, like Georgia lost Santos Surreal early in that game. That certainly was a big factor. But if they can take care of some of the defensive things in this game and then get a little bit more help for Gillespie, I think they could be in a decent spot here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Tennessee should definitely force Fland and Lee to beat them and have the ball the majority of the time and keep the ball out of How's hands and Condon's. But Cody, what do you think Florida has to do? What are their keys to the game?
Yeah, before that, I just wonder how Ruben Chinyalu's face feels after that elbow to the face from Surreal. It came out. I guess it didn't come out of nowhere. They were battling inside a little bit, but kind of just Surreal just got up and threw an elbow straight into his neck.
I'll say this. I think it's maybe the first time that Ruben's actually been on the other side of a flagrant foul.
Yeah, I never really thought of that beforehand, but something like that was bound to happen between those two guys just wrestling down below. They were playing a completely different sport, honestly. But for Florida here, obviously we've touched on the guards a little bit, but Flan and Lee are going to get their opportunities to knock down dribble jumpers, which is the area that they excel. They're very good making shots off the bounce. I know they haven't been phenomenal this season, but last season Flan and especially Xavier Lee, I know it was in the Ivy League, but he is a pretty like his step back jumper is one of the better traits for a guard on this roster. And I think ultimately those guys will get it going a little bit more at some point. We can be I think as low on these guards as anybody, but at the end of the day, Boogie Flan is better than a 19% 3-point shooter and 6 for 43 in tier A and B games combined. It's insane how many threes he's missed. Obviously, the shot, it doesn't look pretty at this point in time, but it could look as bad as possible. You could still shoot it better than 19%. And Xavier Lee shooting at 26%. We had our issues coming into the season off the catch. He just needs to get it going a little bit more. I would like to see more Klavchar usage. They're starting to throw Isaiah Brown in there a little bit more, trying to find a solution in the backcourt, trying to alleviate some pressure off those guys, bringing in a 3 more often than sliding up Tommy Haug to the 4, I think has helped in spurts. It's been a little bit matchup, on a matchup basis more, but they're starting to make some changes. Todd Golden's a great coach. I'm sure that they'll get some stuff figured out, and I think this backcourt is going to look much better at some point this year. But ultimately, the number one key, I'll move over to the defensive end. It's keep Tennessee off the offensive glass. I think it's a pretty obvious point of emphasis. And, Florida, they're 5th in the nation in defensive rebound rate, and they have played a pretty good schedule when it comes to teams that can get on the offensive glass. I believe they've only played 4 teams that are 5 teams that are outside the top 100 in offensive rebound rate out of how many games have they played? 15 now.
15.
15 games. They played 10 teams that are inside the top 100 in offensive rebound rate, and they're still 5th in the country in defensive rebound rate. And obviously pair that, they're the second best offensive rebounding rate team in the country, right behind Tennessee. And you create a two-way rebounding monster. And I think if they're able to out rebound Tennessee over the course of the game, that's going to be a major edge, because Tennessee, particularly on the offensive end, is pretty second chance points reliant. They struggle in some other areas. They aren't great in effective field goal percentage wise. They're fine, but against top 100 teams, it definitely gets worse. They turn it over at a decent clip as well. Florida isn't really going to expose that, but ultimately, if you're keeping this Tennessee front line off the glass, I think you're in a really good spot. So I do actually like the matchup for their defense. I think the one thing to watch out for is off-ball screening actions, and I think Jacoby Gillespie overall is in a decent spot against drop coverage and pick and roll. Nate Ament coming off screens, I think, could be an avenue, but with Tommy Haug chasing him around for 40 minutes, I think they can kind of limit him throughout the course of this game. Nate Ament hasn't really got it going, as we've mentioned a few times here, and I think Tommy Haug is a pretty damn good matchup for him, can match his size, can match his athleticism, and Nate Ament has really struggled with that throughout the course of the entire season. Like if they slide Ament up to the 4, or if Tommy Hauck has to move up to the 4 and they have to throw a smaller guy on him, I could see Nate Ament having some success in this game. But ultimately, Florida's defense matches up pretty well outside of Gillespie versus drop coverage. Maybe him running off screens a little bit as well with like Fland or Lee chasing him, because they're not the most phenomenal screen navigators. I'd rather have Fland on him than Lee, obviously. But ultimately, I think Florida's ability to keep Tennessee off the glass is a major factor in this game. And Florida can generate some transition off these misses, because their half-court offense has been not very good, albeit they've played a pretty good schedule. I think Florida's in the 44th percentile in half-court efficiency this season. So not phenomenal, but like taking into account that they've played a decent amount of bye games on top of that as well. So this just hasn't graded out very well over the course of the season. But on the offensive end, it's pretty much just the exact opposite. Like, get all over the offensive glass. I think the glass and getting to the free throw line are going to be like really the determining factors. Like, I think I don't really talk about the like how games are officiated very often, but I think in this game, whoever really draws more fouls than the other team is ultimately going to win. If you remember last season, like these games were just absolute bloodbaths, very similar style on each other's home floor, but Florida won at home early in the season last year, 73-43. And then they go on the road late in the season, or February 1st of last year, and they lose it 64-44. Just like there was zero shot making in this game. It was just, again, it felt like they were kind of just playing a different sport. It was a ton of fouls throughout the entire game, a lot of free throws. And ultimately, I think Florida is in a better spot here to get the more generous whistle, just because they're playing at home. That's kind of how it seems to go. I think particularly in an SEC battle. I don't know who's officiating these games or how like foul happy they are, but
Probably
I think
Roger
either way,
Ayers, like, come on.
yeah. I mean, he calls every big game, doesn't he? It's going to be, but yeah, it's going to be very, these front courts are pretty depthy, even with Cade Phillips not being in for Tennessee. So I don't think these guys are going to be playing like small ball fives at any point, because there's so many fouls. But ultimately, I do kind of like how Florida sets up. I do think Fland and Lee need to make a few more shots than they have been throughout the entire season to come out with this win. But ultimately, I think they're in a decent spot.
All right. With all that being said, Marcus, who do you think is going to come out on top?
Yeah, I'm gonna take Florida here to win. I think they just have enough offense. I think they're gonna be able to control the glass enough, particularly at home. I think they even, like against Georgia earlier in the week, saw some pleasantly surprising, I don't know, surprising, but just nice minutes from Micah Handlogden off the bench as well. Like he provided a real boost in that game, which, I think that they could really use, 11 rebounds in 18 minutes. It just felt like he was getting a hand on everything. And like you mentioned, Cody, Isaiah Brown starting to get in the mix a little bit more. Klobuchar getting a little bit more run. So maybe they're starting to figure out some sort of rotation that fits them a little bit better, especially if those guards aren't able to get it going. But I just trust them a little bit more. They have more offensive punch at this point in time. And I think, like Cody said, Tennessee relies too much on second chance points. And I don't really see that being a true avenue here for them to consistently generate offense. So I'm going to take Florida here. I'm going to say they're going to actually win by close to double figures. I'm going to say they win by 9. We'll say 81-72.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think just how Tennessee has been playing, especially with the second chance points, and how good of a rebounding team Florida is, makes me steer away from Tennessee picking them as well. But we'll get to that in just a second. First, Cody, I'd like to hear your picks.
Yeah, I would be in agreement. I like Florida here, mostly just because they're at home. I know Tennessee is like they're a pretty scary underdog, honestly, just because of how well they defend and how well they rebound themselves. But here, I think the whistle plays an actual factor here. And I think Flan and Lee will get it going here at some point. I think they're in a better spot when they're asked to dribble create, as opposed to, make shots off the catch. And Tennessee is one of the best teams in the country at forcing you to shoot threes over the top of them. So I do expect those guys to get it going a little bit. They could potentially change the narrative here. Florida wins the glass again. That's a massive factor here for a Tennessee team that's, you know, fairly rebounding reliant, I think, compared to past teams. So I definitely like Florida to get the job done here. I have it a little bit tighter. I have it a little bit lower scoring because I do think there's going to be like somewhat of a pace battle here. Tennessee doesn't really want to run, but especially when they get into league play. I know their pace has been like fairly high this season, but when they're running into a team like Florida who, you know, kind of needs transition to get the job done on the offensive end, I think Tennessee is going to really try to muck this game up as they do on most nights. So I do think this is going to be somewhere in like the 70s, maybe even high 60s. I have Florida winning 72-67.
Yeah, I also have Florida coming out on top for the reasons I kind of said before. But similar score to you, Cody. I have Florida 75-71. Anything to add here, fellas, or are we good to wrap things up?
All good.
All right. As always, thank you for listening to the Mainly Hoops podcast.